And the candidates and panel members here and the audience. The questions will come from our ag and rural leaders, from a group of topics that they have. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to respond. We will rotate questions. To the left of Mr. Dorncamp are the 2nd and 6th district candidates. We'll get a new question for the 7th and 8th candidates. When I hold this up, the first sign is 15 seconds left. When I hold up the second sign, it says stop. And if they don't stop, the guy, Danny, up there in the booth will cut their mics. So we hope that doesn't happen. And at the end, they'll each have a 2-minute closing statement. With that, I want to introduce Mark Dorncamp. He's right in the middle. He's not a candidate, one of the few up here that isn't.
Not yet.
And he is the Minnesota anchor with Brownfield Ag News. He's helped us many times. Please welcome Mark, and he'll get us started.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to FarmFest. I'm going to do my best to keep us in order and keep us on time, but with 11 candidates up here, that's going to be a challenge. But we're going to work through as quickly and efficiently as we can. Let's meet our panel that will be asking our questions this morning. We have Bob Worth, Minnesota Soybean Growers Association President. Give us a wave, Bob. Next to him, Minnesota Corn Growers President Brian Bigler. We have the Vice President of Minnesota Farm Bureau, Carolyn Olson. The President of the Minnesota State Cattlemen's Association, Grant Breitkreitz. And Ag Reporter with the Tri-State Neighbor, Melissa Goss. Thank you all for agreeing to be a part of our forum this morning. So, as Kent mentioned, each round we'll have a question for Districts 2 and 6, followed by a different question for Districts 7 and 8. The incumbents will answer first on the first question, and then the response order will rotate for each subsequent question. Our first question will come from Bob Worth, and Bob's question is for Representative Angie Craig.
Mine's a pretty straightforward question. My question's pretty straightforward. I gotta be really close. I gotta eat it? Okay. How would you improve the farm bill that's going to be written next?
Well, Bob, thank you so much. And first of all, it is so amazing to be back at FarmFest. I am absolutely thrilled. So look, the 2018 Farm Bill, led by Colin Peterson, was pretty damn good to most of the commodities groups and folks, dairy in particular. So, Bob, I think I'm going to make sure that we strengthen the safety net, make sure that the crop insurance title comes first and foremost, both making sure that ARC and PLC are strong. I want to make sure on the conservation side of things that anything we put in place climate related is voluntary, and that it really focuses on the carrot, not the stick. The Reconnect program, broadband in Minnesota, is a really big deal. And just generally, we had a listening session in my district, the Ag Committee, last week. Thank you for so many of you being there. And these are the things, because I've been listening to all of you, that my farmers told me to focus on. So that's what I'm going to be focused on.
Representative Angie Craig, a Democrat, the incumbent. Next to her, we have Tyler Kistner, the Republican candidate for the 2nd District. And same question to you, Tyler.
Yeah, what we need to focus on with this next ag bill is going to be production agriculture. What you get from the Biden administration was a shift of focus onto climate change and other issues. We need to get refocused back on what affects the ag community the most, and that is agriculture production. The direction of the Farm Bill is going to be dictated, and the direction of the Farm Bill will go with who controls Congress and those subcommittees. And I bet your bottom dollar, and with inflation, we have fewer of those now going around. But if the Democrats control Congress, this Farm Bill is going to have payments tied to the Green New Deal, and it's going to dictate where those payments and practices go. With Republicans, the focus will be on production agriculture, plain and simple.
Same question for Paula Overby, who is running with the Legalize Marijuana Now party.
Well, we're getting together with my stewardship project next week to really talk about those issues. I favor the long-term sustainability and resilience of the agricultural industry. I think it's critical to our whole social infrastructure. I focus on things like educating young people, creating opportunities for young people, things like urban agriculture, educational programs, community-supported agriculture, community gardens. I would like to see a lot more of that in the next Farm Bill.
Our second district candidates. Representing the 6th district, we have Republican Tom Emmer. Again, that question about the Farm Bill.
The
Congressman.
Farm Bill is going to be incredibly important. First, I'd like to echo my colleague Angie Craig's welcome. Thanks for having us. It's great to be at FarmFest, one of the best events of the year, and I'm glad we're doing it again. When it comes to the next Farm Bill, I think it should be an empowering document. I think we should be looking at things, if people don't understand after this pandemic that our national food security is our national security, then you're missing something. We got to address supply chains. We got to address the cost of fertilizer. We have to realize that it all starts with energy. We have to have an all-of-the-above energy policy. We don't eliminate one over the other. And this idea that we've got a governor who's going to try and bypass the legislative process to pass a California law on clean cars and put more pressure on the farm industry, the ag communities in our state, is outrageous. We've got to have leadership that recognizes that this is the community that matters. Agriculture is one of the 2 primary driving forces of our state's economy, and we should remember that.
The Democrat candidate for the 6th district, Jeanne Hendricks.
Good morning, everyone. I am so pleased to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Jeanne Hendricks. I think the next Farm Bill is going to be influenced by the new Inflation Reduction Act that's presently in Congress and going to be voted on imminently. That bill is going to bring more money to conservation measures for the Farm Bill. I think it's going to influence that. I think it's important that we are going to be changing to renewables. The oil companies are gouging our farmers with their high prices. This Inflation Reduction Bill will also give more money to biofuels and increase money to the ethanol production, which is so important to get away from our dependence on the oil companies, and it will reduce costs for our farmers. So I think all those things need to be included in the Farm Bill. Thank you.
Thank you all. A new question for our 7th and 8th district candidates, and the question will come from Minnesota Corn Growers President Brian Bigler.
Yeah, I guess I kind of lead off on kind of follow what Bob I was on about like crop insurance in the Farm Bill. Have any special proposals, or what's your support on those programs?
And answering first will be the incumbent Republican Michelle Fischbach.
Well, I will tell you, crop insurance is going to be an incredibly important part of that Farm Bill. It is something that I hear from all of the groups that are coming out to see me that I'm visiting with, and so what we've got to make sure is that if it isn't broken, don't fix it. And so we don't want to add on a variety of things and put requirements and stipulations on that. We want to make sure that it continues to be the crop insurance program that you know now. So that it is actually a planning tool for farmers and it is part of your business plan. So that is something we are going to be doing. And I jump right into the question, but I do want to say thank you all for being here. This is wonderful. A little warm, but still having a great time, and I always love being at FarmFest. The first year when I was running during the COVID, we had to do everything on Zoom, but it's great to be here today and looking forward to visiting you, with all of you the rest of the day. So thank you very much.
Same question to the Democrat candidate for the 7th District, Jill Abasane.
It's great to be here. Nice to see everyone, and great to see you. Thank you all for coming, and as the DFL endorsed candidate, I want you to know that I'm not Colin Peterson. It's the first time in 30 years that he isn't sitting in this seat. But to the Farm Bill, the critical parts, I see several. The biggest one is the nutrition title and the changes that could possibly be made in that. Now, Colin Peterson and the chairs of the Agricultural Committee have brought that bill and grown it over the years to support our farmers, and it's been they've done a great job. But there is talk of removing in the nutrition title, removing the SNAP from it. That's a huge amount of money. We need it to be a bipartisan bill, and if they are going to put it into the states, then this would be detrimental for all of us. Thank you.
Our third candidate for the 7th District, representing the Legalize Marijuana Now Party, Travis Bull Johnson.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bull Johnson. To answer your question, sir, as far as crop insurance is concerned, is any changes? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I had a nice conversation with Colin Peterson this week, who was advising me on Farm Bill issues, and that pretty much was his advice. He said, you know what, last couple of years, it's worked pretty well. I mean, when you start messing with something that's working, you have a tendency to break it. So his advice was, I mean, for a majority of this Farm Bill, I mean, keep it going the way it's going, because anything you add, you're probably going to have to take something away, and that's going to be kind of hard to justify in a Farm Bill that's working very well right now. So to answer your question, sir, I don't think I would change much, but a lot of this would come with feedback I get from constituents. I plan on being at this follow-on forum with the people who are going to say what do they want, what do they think they need in the next Farm Bill, and that could always adjust my thought process, but as of right now, that's my answer, sir.
Same question as we move now to the 8th district in the incumbent Republican Pete Stauber.
Well, thanks for inviting me down here again to be here. It's a great part of our August recess. Specifically to the question on crop insurance, it is a must, but what we can't do is tie it to mandates involving climate change or the Green New Deal. You all will be devastated if you're forced to transition when we're not ready. We're seeing that across the nation right now with the gas and diesel prices that you all are paying. So crop insurance is a must. It's going to be in the Farm Bill, but make sure that it's not tied and mandated to any other climate mandates or Green New Deal mandates. And I think that would be one of the things that I'm going to be advocating for in that Farm Bill.
Next, Democrat candidate Jen Schultz.
Thank you. My name's Jeanne Schultz, and I'm the DFL endorsed candidate. And I'm here because, for one reason, farmers asked me to run for office, because I truly believe that we need to invest in our farmers and invest in our rural communities, so they are vital. So the Farm Bill, I'm excited to, we'll be working on that in 2023 to work with all of our farmers across the state and in the 8th district, to work with our exceptional Commissioner Tom Peterson. We have 7 tribes in the 8th district to work with the Native Farm Bill Coalition. And to answer the question, there's a lot we can do to improve the Farm Bill. I'm hearing from farmers, with inflation, we need to make sure that our programs are based on commodity prices as well, because of inflation of input costs and other expenses farmers are realizing. So we need to make sure we have good support programs, good crop insurance that works for the farmers in Minnesota.
8th district Democrat candidate John Munter, and this will be the last for this round of questions.
Thank you. I'm the only candidate that lives in a rural area. I'm a 6th generation Minnesotan. How many of you have been affected by drought? Hands right now? Any hands in southern Minnesota? I know there's a real drought situation in southern Minnesota, some moderate, some severe, but Cargill, I know, is selling out their operations in Texas and moving to Nebraska and North Dakota and Canada. We also have a change in bringing in fertilizer. The Russians are reducing their gasoline to Europe. That could reduce fertilizer. We know fertilizer has jumped up way in price, and so farming has really changed in terms of corn growing, and I think that can be very expensive going into the future. So I think we should be transitioning into farming carbon and multiple crops instead of corn. Thank you.
We'll move back down to this end of the table, and the order will be candidates Kistner, Overby, Emmer, Hendricks, and Craig. Our question comes from Minnesota Farm Bureau Vice President Carolyn Olson.
How will you address the implementation of broadband for rural areas with inadequate or no current access to reliable or affordable internet?
Check, check. Oh, there we go. No, rural broadband is very crucial and important to the rural communities, and we need to start finding ways to continue to push that deeper and deeper down to the rural community, especially within the 2nd District, but across the entire state and the country. Because as we see people moving out of Minneapolis and Twin Cities and out of the suburbs, they are starting to move into the rural areas, and we need to give them greater connectivity and access, especially with the technology that a lot of the people within the ag community are using as well, and continue to invest in those type of opportunities for them and help them in every single way.
Candidate Overby.
I mean, I definitely think this is one area where government should definitely be partnering with local business, local communities to build out that infrastructure. We've certainly, I mean, people are already aware of how important it is. I work in education. I'm an IT director at a school. I know what it was like to provide distance learning during the pandemic. I can't begin to imagine what it was like trying to supply those services to people that didn't have broadband. So it isn't just about business and industry, it's also about education and the future of our young people.
Representative
We need to
Emmer.
understand it's important.
I'm sorry, did you say Emmer?
Yes.
All right, great. A lot of feedback. Carolyn, thanks for the question. First off, you know, the 19th century was about building out our interstate highway system in this country. It's about the economics, and what resulted was this great quality of life that we have. The 21st century, it's still about roads, bridges, railroads, airports, seaports, etc. But guess what? It's now also about broadband. And we've been doing, for the last 8 years, every single time this issue comes up, we've been trying to empower local communities, states, make sure that they have the resources, but then give them the flexibility to utilize the funds that are there. And I'll tell you right now, there's a whole bunch of money that the current administration flooded into the system that frankly could be repurposed for some of this. I mean, it's not just education that we experienced during the pandemic, those of us that had kids trying to learn from home, but it's healthcare and a whole host of other things. Now is the time, the 21st century is all about rural broadband all across this country.
Same question to candidate Hendricks.
Hello, everybody. Okay, the state currently has a broadband program. It's funded through grants for underserved areas, so that's available. But also, the state is getting $650 million from the infrastructure bill, and some of that is earmarked for the broadband program. And I would start with areas that are not served at all initially, and and then access the folks that after that, but those areas need to be hit first, and that's largely the rural area. Broadband is so important for telehealth and for web visits. It would bring a lot of the farming community, update the farming community. So anyway, yes, this money is on its way, and it's going to be apportioned over 5 years, so we're getting broadband money. It's exciting.
Our last response to that question, Representative Craig.
Look, I am so thrilled to be among the top 15% most bipartisan members of Congress. I mean, hell, I vote with Pete Stauber almost 50% of the time. I think I vote with Emmer 46% of the time. And broadband and the work we do on the Ag Committee, it is critical. And I'm not going to tell you what I do as a member of Congress. I'll just tell you what I've done. I've brought $7 million back to CD2 in the last 2 years. I've brought $100 million in broadband funding back to Minnesota, $6 billion for highways, roads, bridges, which broadband is critical infrastructure across our nation. I told you in my opening question, the Reconnect program and the Farm Bill is absolutely critical. And I'm just going to end with this. You can start a business anywhere if you have broadband. And I've served on a select committee this entire 2 years, and my focus is on rural communities. So let's make sure we keep our rural hospitals and our rural health care. Let's make sure that people can live anywhere in this country, and especially in Minnesota's 2nd District. Thank you.
Back to this side of the table, the 7th and 8th districts. The order will be candidates Abasane, Johnson, Stauber, Schultz, Munter, and Fischbach, and the question will come from Minnesota State Cattlemen's Association President Grant Breitkreitz.
Animal agriculture and regulations, I guess I would like your thoughts on it. Currently, we're dealing with a tremendous amount of regulations, whether they're state or national, and it's starting to affect the family farms that would like to expand or continue in agriculture. And saying that, you know, we're getting pushed to the point where we almost have to have staff to take care of the regulations. So I guess your thoughts and concerns on that, and thank you.
Candidate Abasine, you're first.
Thank you for the question. No doubt the bureaucracy has gotten way out of control, I think. But I do think for the health of American produce and our people, we need to make sure that we have good, understandable guidelines. I also support the expanding the meat processing plants. We only have like 4 in the state of Minnesota, and we've seen what happens when one shuts down. It was an awful experience during COVID. There are provisions for that in the Farm Bill. The fact that the farming has gotten so difficult is leading the next generation not to go be on farms. And I am concerned mainly about the next generation of farmers, and if it takes scaling back or rewriting legislation that has to do with farming and animals, then I would be for that.
Candidate Johnson.
Thanks for asking that question. I'm really going to be sad I only have a minute to address it. As a small livestock producer myself, I mean, we deal with this. The regulations really make it hard for me to get, as a small producer, to get my product to market. I mean, if somebody comes up to me and says, "Bolo, hey, I need 30 pounds of hamburger," sorry, dude, I can't sell it. Why not? Well, my custom processor is not USDA inspected. Well, do it anyway. Well, I'm sorry, dude, I can't do it. I mean, and for small farmers, I mean, we all know we're losing farmers. To add small farmers, we need to open up these small markets, these niche markets. It's the only way people can afford to get into them. Regulations make that hard. I'm running on a small government leave you alone loan platform. But we definitely need to do this. We need to move forward Massey's Prime Bill. We need to do everything we can to allow us to open up these markets to increase our food diversity. We saw what happens when a major plant closes down. There's no excuse for that. We should all have alternate ways to get our market. Thank you.
Same question to Representative Stauber.
Grant, that's a great question. I serve on a small business committee, and these aren't my numbers. These are the Biden administration's number. In 2021, the Biden administration put an additional $201 billion of regulations on American farmers and American small business. Simply unacceptable. And what I want to do is I want to repeal that. I want to repeal those regulations that are stifling, that don't allow you to grow, don't allow your farm to be prosperous. Look at the waters of the United States, for example. An activist judge allowed that to go back rather than keeping the navigable waters of the United States. And so as we go forward, we must fight back. We must fight this administration because it's regulation over regulation over regulation. And on the Small Business Committee and with my colleagues on the Aid Committee, we are going to continue to push to remove WOTUS. It's devastating, along with the gray wolves. The gray wolves is another issue in northern Minnesota. And I'm leading that issue to get them off the endangered species list.
Candidate Schultz.
Thank you for that question, Grant. We need to make sure our livestock farmers are thriving as well. And often I see a lot of mandates when incentives may work better. There's a whole industry that's created to help farmers with consulting to address a lot of the paperwork that comes with mandates. And I think we need to make it much more easier and efficient for farmers to take advantage of our government programs and not make it more difficult for them to benefit from these programs to help farmers thrive, and that includes livestock farmers. But we do have to keep in mind that farming is a business, and I'm an economist. I think we need to make sure they thrive. We make sure they have the programs to thrive. Right now, farmers are only getting 14.3 cents for every dollar spent on food. The hard work and dedication that our farmers do every day, they should be getting much more value from what they produce than what they currently do. And we can do that with partnership with the government and the USDA and with input from our farmers to help us lead the way, lead the charge to make sure we're working in partnership to make sure our livestock farmers, all of our farmers thrive.
Candidate Munter.
Thank you. the next farm bill should have funding in it for the USDA to buy up Asparagopsis seaweed and jumpstart that industry, because only a handful of it can reduce the methane from a cow from 80 to 99%. That's a huge deal, and it's something we should really do. Australia is working on that now. We only grow that seaweed in Hawaii right now, but Asparagopsis seaweed handed out by the USDA, no cost to the farmer in the beginning anyway, should be done.
And our final response to this round of questions, Representative Fischbach.
Well, thank you very much. And I will say very adamantly that the regulation is out of control. And I think that Congressman Stauber mentioned, repealing some of that with WOTUS. And I am co-sponsor on a recently introduced bill that's led by G.T. Thompson, and it has a long name, Reducing Farm Input Costs and Barriers to Domestic Production Act. But that is addressing, they name everything in D.C., but that is addressing some of those out of control regulations and looking, it does address WOTUS, and so we are working to do that. In addition to that, some of the recent proposals on additional reporting requirements for farmers, we are looking at trying to get rid of those too. But I understand that we don't need to make farmers continue to address these regulations, report, and all of that. You don't need to hire someone just simply to do the book work on reporting requirements. So absolutely, and happy to work. As a matter of fact, just talking to a farmer outside the door about the overregulation. So it is an issue we need to absolutely address. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Melissa Goss, an ag reporter with the Tri-State Neighbor, and the order will be Overby, Emmer, Hendricks, Craig, and Kistner.
Okay, thank you. What is your stance on checkoff programs, and more specifically, do you think that packers and processors should be able or should have to pay into the checkoff program as well?
I'm sorry.
Repeat the question, please.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I could hear myself up there. Okay, sorry. Thank you. What is your stance on checkoff programs, and more specifically, do you believe that processors and packers should also be paying into this program?
Question about checkoff programs and if packers and processors should be paying into, say, the pork and the beef checkoff, for example. Candidate Overby, you are responding first this round.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the program that she's referring to. So I guess I can pass on the question, but I could also say that agriculture used to be, when I was in agriculture, when I was on the farm, it was an owner-operated business. And today, it's very much of a labor-intensive business.
Let's go back to the table here quick. Grant Breitkreis can offer a little bit more explanation. Grant Breitkreis is Mike.
Just a little clarification. The checkoff that the question is asked about in the beef industry, we pay $1 per animal every time an animal is sold, either to processing or through a livestock barn.
So, just to clarify?
You good? Paula, you want me to jump in?
Yeah.
Or you want to do it? I got it. You got to leave that one for
Does Candidate Overby
Tyler.
get an
I'll jump
opportunity
in.
to respond to that first, since it was explained again?
I'll do my best to answer the question. I do appreciate it. The checkoff program is a very valuable program. This is a program, though, that the industry, no matter what, should make these decisions and work with us. We're customer service reps in Congress. We work for you. The producers, I think the wrong question for me is, how much do I think the packers and processors should pay? Look, we should be in the business of trying to make your lives easier. Right now, because this administration has destroyed our energy independence on day one 2 years ago, we're experiencing double-digit inflation. They passed $1.9 trillion in spending. They flooded the marketplace with dollars. They released people who've been locked up for 1.5 years to go out and consume. Surprise, surprise, we have issues with supply chains. Now the answer that they have? is to spend more money. You cannot spend your way to prosperity. The checkoff programs serve a very good purpose. The industry should be talking to us about what they think is fair. We're happy to work with you on that. But the real issue, let's get this inflation under control. Let's get gas prices back down. Let's put middle America and ag America back in charge of their own future.
Candidate Hendricks, you are next.
Well said. Just a little bit more clarification. So what you were saying is that the farmers have to pay a certain dollar per cow, and you want the packers to have to pay something per animal as well. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah. Well, you know, at first blush, I think that's a really good idea. I think they should have to share in the expense, and it shouldn't all fall to the farmer. I think it's a great idea to impose a fee on them as well. So yes, I think that's a great idea, to have them share in the burden of that. Thank you.
Representative Craig.
Well, look, the checkoff program helps expand markets, and I think we need to make sure that, you know, our producers and our ranchers are continuing to build those markets. And, you know, I know, Grant, we've talked about this in the past and with a number of folks. And, you know, the real problem when I think about the industry itself is that producers and ranchers aren't getting a big enough cut. The middlemen are. And so when I think about what we need to do, it really focuses on making sure that farmers and ranchers are at the table, part of this conversation, and you're getting your fair share of the cut. We, you know, with you know, the meat processing sector itself, we need to make sure that we're expanding to more regional meat packing processing centers. And look, consolidation is a big problem in this sector. We all know that. And foreign ownership, especially when, you know, Chinese and Brazilian companies own them all, is a real problem in this sector. And so we got to keep expanding the markets, and that's something that we'll continue to fight for.
Our final response for that question goes to candidate Kistner.
I'm going to agree with Congressman Emmer on this one. What we need to be doing up here is finding ways to cut down your input cost. Every single farmer is struggling just as much as every American household is struggling with inflation, gas prices, and these disastrous policies by the Biden administration. We need to find common sense solutions to make sure we get back to energy independence, address the supply chain issues, and make sure we're doing everything we can for you guys to make sure we're trying to cut down on that input cost to help not only just small businesses, farmers, but every American household that is suffering through this disastrous economic policies that they're pushing through the last year and a half.
Again, to my right, we have the candidates for the 2nd and 6th districts. To my left, the candidates for the 7th and 8th districts. And for Districts 7 and 8, the question this round will come from Minnesota Soybean Growers President Bob Wirth. The order will be Johnson, Stauber, Schultz, Munter, Fischbach, and Abasang.
I'm going to switch gears. I'm switching gears just a little bit. I'm going to talk about biofuels. How would you support the biofuels if you are elected?
You put me in a bad spot there, because my idea on biofuels is we do need to move forward with the new law to allow additional biofuels to be used. However, I am against any mandates to require biofuels. Biofuels need to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, and not because Uncle Sam says you have to do it. So I am very against the 10% mandate with ethanol that's currently in place. Ethanol needs to be able to stand on its own as a product. And I believe it can. We have, what, 200 byproducts that come out of ethanol right now. It's lowering the price of our fuel. I mean, there's no reason it can't stand on its own 2 feet at this point in time. But we do need to look at biofuels. We do need to look at all other options for energy, not just on the biofuels, but on the nuclear issues. We need to expand and diversify our energy portfolio as a country, and specifically as an industry. Thank you.
Representative Stauber.
Thank you very much. It's an important part of the industry, and as you look at the biofuels, it's an opportunity. I supported the year-round sale of it. It increases the opportunities for our farmers. And I think we have to follow the law on exemptions, not be willy-nilly. And I think that as we move forward, I think biofuels are going to be even a bigger part of the conversation. And we're going to add, I think, more opportunities for biofuels to be increased in our fuel production, and it's going to come from the Minnesota farmer. But the bottom line is the exemptions have to be fair if there's going to be any exemptions. And I know that the concerns that are brought to my attention are it's not fair. And that's exactly what I want to do when we get back, is look towards that 2023 Farm Bill to make sure that you all can thrive and succeed.
Candidate Schultz.
Thank you for that question. I support our ethanol standards. I support Senator Klobuchar's bill, the Next Generation Fuels Act, for higher octane fuels. I think it's cheaper, it apparently lowers our carbon footprint, and it serves a dual purpose, and it serves to diversify your commodities. So I fully support it. I think that we need to make sure all gas stations can offer the higher blending rates. To answer the question about inflation, I am concerned about your input costs, but a lot of the inflation is being driven by the consolidation of corporations in the farming ag industry, and we need to make sure that we go after price gouging, that we have so much consolidation in our fertilizer industry that your input costs are being driven by that consolidation. Those are the issues that I would love to work on for farmers in Minnesota.
Candidate Munter.
Hi, thank you. I agree that ethanol should stand on its own and not have the $1.4 billion subsidy that it currently has. This money could be plowed back into the soil of the Midwest and growing carbon in our soils. And I think also some of it could be going to expand the number of meat packers in this country, because they made 120% profit in the last year. And Biden started that. He put $1 billion towards expanding meat packers in the ARPA bill, but I think that could be expanded as well to bring down the cost.
Question on biofuels to Representative Fischbach.
Well, thank you very much for that question, Bob. I appreciate that. And I have been a supporter of biofuels since I was in the Minnesota Senate. It is something that's very important. I'm a co-sponsor on the year-round E15 bill. And I think that, as those gas prices go up, we see what the effect that it has at the pump, and that we can get less expensive. We can save a few dollars by using that at the pump. But one of the things that does concern me is that it's not part of the discussion of climate change. As we talk about all of these conservation things we should be doing, we need to make sure that those biofuels are part of that discussion, because they are cleaner, and that is part of what we are trying to do, is drop those emissions. So I am a supporter and making sure it is part of the local economy. You have those ethanol plants, you have those plants all over the 7th District, and we need to make sure that we are supporting them, and that we are making sure they succeed.
Candidate Abasane.
Okay. Thank you for the question. And I kind of see some bipartisan support on this particular question, because we do support biofuels. There's been a lot of talk about mandates up here and requirements for farmers to participate in particular programs, but for the climate mitigation programs, that's a voluntary program. I would also support other forms of energy, renewable energy. We have to look to the future, to the next generation of farmers. Biofuels has been the beginning, and it has taken off. It is a good program. It supports many different products, ending with fuels for the cars. Ultimately, I would like to see the next generation expand on more renewable energy, and that the farmer should be part and parcel of that new generation. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Minnesota Corn Growers Association President Brian Bigler, and responding first will be Representative Emmer.
Well, since I'm from corn, I definitely got to bring up about biofuels here. Like Bob, what policies would you champion that help to support Minnesota renewable fuels industry, and like ethanol and biodiesel, that are important value-based markets for our Minnesota commodities groups, Minnesota commodities and farmers?
Thank you, Brian. And Scott, I think I'll just jump in. First, I already have. I believe, as Representative Fischbach just said, very important part of our economic viability in Minnesota. But let's go back to this inflation issue. because this is why it's so important. We need an all-of-the-above energy policy in this country. Anybody who suggests that inflation is being driven in this country by consolidation of the ag industry ignores that we had a record economy when this administration came in. And the very first day that Joe Biden took office, he started destroying American energy independence. You look at where we were 2 years ago, a gallon of gas was $2.33 in my neighborhood. Now they're celebrating that it's just above $4. This is what we have to do to help everyone here, is address the spending, the out-of-control spending. And get ready, because they're going to do another another $750 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, 5.3% of what they're proposing to spend in this reconciliation pig next week goes to ag. So I think you got to focus on the things that are most important right now, affecting every ag family and every middle-class family across this country.
Candidate Hendricks.
Okay, here we go. Again, I'm going to get back to this new Inflation Reduction Act that's in Congress right now that's going to be voted on, okay? And what that's going to do is provide $3.2 billion to the Conservation Stewardship Program, $8 billion to the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. It's going to provide, this is the most important thing, $300 million for a carbon sequestration and greenhouse gas emissions quantification program, which that's amazing. If we can have the numbers and the science to know where we need to make these changes, that's in this bill, okay? Let's see, $14 billion to support good paying clean energy jobs in rural communities. I think we need to expand on solar and wind for sure. But there's a lot of support for biofuels and ethanol in this new bill, and so it's going to be exciting. Right, so the money's going to be there.
Our two 6th district candidates, and now we move back to the 2nd district, and it is Representative Craig's turn.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate so much all of you talking about my bill, because I'm the first member of Congress to ever, in the history of this Congress, pass a bill that would allow for year-round sales of E15. I am thrilled to be able to get that across the finish line as your member of Congress. Look, it's important what we're doing. Biodiesel, extending the tax credits, we got to get that done. And what, my good friend and colleague Tom Emmer didn't tell you, that's in the bill he's complaining about, extending the biodiesel tax credit for 3 years. What he didn't tell you, too, is that in that bill is the largest investment, $500 million in retail expansion of biofuels. So look, it is a really interesting time. I am so pleased that I've got so much support from across the aisle for the work that I've done in the ag community, and I can tell you this, it's a binary choice when you're sitting up here, and I'd ask you all to think about this. Are you going to support big oil, or are you going to support family farmers? I've made my choice.
Candidate Kistner.
When you look at E15, if I remember right, wasn't it Trump that passed E15 year-round, and then it was the courts that got rid of it? And yet, we are trying to push a bill with a Democratic-controlled Congress and White House, and they can't even get anything passed. What we need is to start looking at energy dependence and start tapping into our own natural resources instead of selling everything over to China. We'll try to beg, borrow, and steal from the Middle East. We, with our farmers, when it comes to biofuels, need to find ways to have more freedom, ingenuity, and innovation to make sure farmers can use these products in the best way to help support this economy and help support our ag community.
Candidate Overby.
I definitely support the future of biofuels. Again, I'm very interested in the sustainability, the resiliency of agriculture and the future of agriculture. I'm with the Legal Marijuana Now party, so we are in favor of alternative futures, perhaps. So in addition to supporting the industries that we currently have, I mean, can we truly migrate fossil fuels to electric energy, wind and solar? Can we potentially migrate corn biofuels to algae perhaps, or hemp? We have a lot of farmers that are interested in hemp, but we don't have the processing or the infrastructure or the research money. So those are some of the things I look at in terms of alternative development and future development in the future of our industries. Thank you.
Our next question is for the 7th and 8th district candidates, and the question comes from Minnesota Farm Bureau Vice President Carolyn Olson. The order will be Stauber, Schultz, Munter, Fischbach, Abasane, and Johnson.
So we'll turn it back to livestock. Highly pathogenic avian influenza hit Minnesota poultry farmers hard, and African swine fever is top of mind for Minnesota hog farmers. What do you believe needs to be done to strengthen the livestock industry in light of animal disease?
Carolyn, thanks for the question, and as I go around the district, and I've spoken to you and others about it, there's a couple things we have to do. We have to continue the research and development, and at our ports, import and exports of entry, we have to make sure that we have the proper staff there to monitor these animals coming into our country. We know it can be devastating. We know that they're training beagles right now for certain diseases. Disease that hits our American farmer, hits the American family's table, and those are some things that many people don't think about other than the agriculture community. So I, for one, am supportive of making sure that the borders are secure as far as the animal imports and exports. I think that's one part of securing our food chain and our food supply to make sure that it's the best in the world.
Candidate Schultz.
Thank you, Carolyn, for that question. So for 8 years, I've been a state legislator. I remember when our turkey producers were hit really hard with avian flu, and we acted immediately to help with funding, but also with funding for a vet diagnostic lab from the University of Minnesota. So we need to make sure that we're investing in research so we can prevent it from happening, any disease for livestock animals. We can help our livestock producers that are impacted by any future disease or virus, because it is devastating for them to lose their livestock, their flocks, their turkeys. So we need to make sure that we protect them from any uncertainty, but also we need to develop the research and the tools to make sure we can prevent it from happening, and when it does happen, we can address it, but also the education that producers need to prevent it from happening if we don't have the science yet developed to inoculate our livestock. So thank you for that question.
Candidate Munter.
Thank you. Well, the basis of this country is checks and balances, where we have a very strong capitalist system. We should also have a very strong regulatory system and USDA and help for farmers in every which way. So when we have outbreaks, we can have immediate assistance, and we can have increasing family farmer friendly initiatives rather than corporate farmer friendly initiatives, which can spread disease. And so I believe in a strong capitalism, but also a strong governmental system, because things are getting ever more complicated and sophisticated and scientific, and so we need to have government competent in these areas. Thank you.
Representative Fischbach.
And the recent outbreak was very serious, and I think we did learn a lot from the 2015, and we put some of that into effect with the additional response and the varying response and how we dealt with the avian flu this year. And I sit in Candy, Ohio County, so I talked to the people that they were going through it. You know, it's right there, and visited with a lot of the response team with the avian flu, but I think what we need to do, is make sure that we are looking at, we are investing in the research dollars that we need to do that so that we can prevent it, because it's not only response, but it's about prevention too, so that we don't have to respond to it. We need to make sure we have that, and also, monitoring. I think Congressman Stauber had mentioned, those imports and exports, and making sure that we are addressing that too. But I think research dollars is the key.
Candidate Abasane.
Thank you for the question. I am from Stearns County. I was working in 2015 as an educator in Jenny-O and Golden Plump chicken producers when we got hit by the major pathogenic shutdowns. I saw that those factory producers were doing the best they could with the science that they had, and it still wasn't enough. To me, I think the answer lies in diversification. This the bird flu tends to decimate large farms and small, but the large farms are harder to control, and if we had more diversification and not factory farms, I would think we would have a step up on the next generation of virus. There is also the education aspect of it. We have the University of Minnesota EDU that will assist with diagnostics and medication and telemedicine with vets. With all of this put together and organized for farmers, I do believe diversification is the answer, and foraging ahead with education. Thank you.
Question on avian flu to candidate Johnson.
I think it's very important that we realize that eliminating or preventing these diseases completely are just not possible. We do have to work on our risk mitigations as well as mitigating the effects when this happens. As farmers, as producers, it is our responsibility to have biosecurity measures when we have visitors to our farms. Problem is, when you deal with something like avian flu, you can't very well tell the birds they have to change their boots when they come in. But one of the things we have to work on is diversifying, as you said, our supply chains, our producers, but not only that, but diversifying our genetics. If most of these major farms carry similar genetic lines, if there is a issue with a gene in there that may not even show up until this disease hits that weakness, I mean, you've just wiped out a good portion of our production. So we do need to have genetic diversification, and a lot of times that's where our smaller farmers kick in, because they do have more of the heritage, the old breeds that we can use to help address some of these possible issues. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our candidates. We have done a really good job of staying on time, and because of time and with 11 candidates up here on the stage, we do need to move to closing comments, and for that we will go back to our original order. So we'll start to my right with Representative Angie Craig and work our way that direction. Representative Craig.
Well,
and they have 2 minutes, by the way.
Sorry. Thank you so much to everybody here at FarmFest. Again, it's just fantastic to be back here. Look, I serve on the Ag Committee of the U.S. Congress. I serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee of the U.S. Congress. And the reason I serve on those two committees is because my grandfather was a farm foreman. He farmed cotton and rice, and somewhere a little further south in southern Minnesota. And he lost his job in the 1980s farm crisis. So I know how important it is to make sure that we have family farmers across our nation. It's really important to me that the Ag Committee stay truly bipartisan, which is why I am so proud to be in the top 15% of all bipartisan members of Congress. And I'm going to tell you, you know, you get bills done and you come here and you talk about what you did. Sometimes what didn't happen is also really important when you're in the U.S. Congress. And I can tell you this, I told this administration that if a change in the stepped-up basis was in any bill last year, that I wouldn't support it. And the truth is, without me and about 3 of my other colleagues, Democrats don't have the votes to pass the bill. So that was a line in the sand that I drew last year as a member of the Congress representing the ag community. Look, the Farm Bill is going to be really important. Making sure that America maintains and becomes, again, energy independent is important, and biofuels is a huge part of that effort. Not only did I pass the E15 year-round bill, which had never passed in law, it had been done through executive action, I also am one of the lead authors of the Next Generation Fuels Act. I am going to have your back, and I'm going to make sure that we move forward as your member of Congress. Look, your voice matters. I'm going to keep representing everyone in my community. I listen to everybody. I got people on a Farmer Advisory Council, about half of it or more do not identify with my current party, but I am going to represent Minnesota.
Thank you, Congresswoman Angie Craig, the incumbent in the 2nd District. Her Republican challenger is Tyler Kistner.
Folks, I want to thank each and every one of you, as well as the panel, the moderator, for this wonderful event. Appreciate all the support that you guys gave to everyone up here. For those who don't know me, my name is Tyler Kistner. Minnesota born and raised, Marine veteran of 9 years, officer, Marine Special Forces, 4 overseas tours, which inside this climate here does feel like I'm overseas right now, as warm as it is. Married my high school sweetheart, and we have 2 wonderful little children, my 5-year-old girl Elodie and my 1-year-old boy Gabriel, and I will say those 2 are the greatest inspiration to ever get up and fight for something, because it's for their future, it's for your children's future and our future generations, and that's what gets us out of bed to continue to do what we do. And I will just say, food security is national security. And when you look at what's going on in this country, we have an economic crisis, and we need to start standing up and supporting our food security. And that starts with putting a check and balance to the Biden administration, which is mortgaging my children's future, your children's future, and mortgaging our future generations. So we need to win back Congress and have a Republican-controlled Congress that's going to combat inflation and start putting American farmers and American households and families first. And we're going to do that by addressing inflation, by cutting spending, by starting to look at more U.S. energy dominance to help with that input cost of farmers, and ultimately by addressing that supply chain issue to make sure we shorten that time from the field to the market to the consumer. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm running for Congress to make sure farmers had a seat at the table and that you're always at the decision points. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to ensure we're looking after Main Street and not Wall Street.
Thank you, Tyler. Second District candidate Paula Overby, representing the Legalize Marijuana Now Party.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a few years, and I want to thank you for having us. I really do support a significant shift in priorities in Washington, which is probably why I'm not aligned with one of the 2 Washington parties. I think that we're talking about economic issues here. We're talking about supply chains, we're talking about labor, we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking a little bit about the future. We're not talking so much about the social impacts of some of those policies, like housing and healthcare and education. But all of those are important to the sustainability and the viability of our agricultural industry. So I believe that economic power is the essential power in today's global economy. And I, for one, don't believe that we should be, that if we want to lead the world in economic power, we shouldn't be threatening to go to war with China. And our military budget, Defense Department budget, shouldn't be growing faster than our ag budget, or our education budget, or even our healthcare budget. And that's a kind of an extreme position, and I think it's a very important position, and I think that it's important to support that position. I think that a little bit of a diversity in perspective is a healthy thing for our democracy, and I want to thank everyone for having us, and I hope you have a great day here at FarmFest. Thank you.
Let's thank our 3 Second District candidates participating in the forum today. Our next closing comments come from the incumbent in the 6th District, Republican Tom Emmer.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks, Kent. Thanks to our panel, and thanks to everyone who's here today. Thank you for not only feeding our great state, feeding our country, but feeding the world. I think what you're getting out of this experience, and by the way, every elected official and or someone who wants to be elected in this state at the local level, the state level, the county level, the federal level should be at FarmFest. This is one of the 2 primary drivers of our state's economy, and people have to recognize that, and we have to realize there are fewer and fewer of you doing more and more for the rest of us. I mean, if it weren't for the pandemic, I don't know that many people would start to figure out that their food does not come from Trader Joe's. Right? Unfortunately, a lot of people today think they go to the grocery store, there it is. It wasn't until they started to see shortages, it wasn't until they started worrying about whether or not they were going to be able to afford bacon that they actually start contemplating how serious this is. There's a choice to be made this November. And yes, I agree with my colleagues. We do work together. We got a great delegation, but there's a significant choice. They want to blame everything but themselves. They want to blame Putin. They want to blame major corporations. They want to blame you and I. We're the reason that we have inflation and skyrocketing gas prices. We're the reason that there's crime across this country. When in fact, if they would look in the mirror, it is the Biden administration, Nancy Pelosi, and Democrats who are now socialists. They are not my grandfather's Democrats. They are socialists. They want an America that looks like Venezuela or Cuba or some former Russian regime. It's time they look in the mirror and go back to what was a Democrat when my grandfather was so proud to be one. There's one party that can lead. There's one party that can solve the inflation issue, solve the crime issue, and put all of you back in charge of our future. That's the Republican Party. Thank you for having us here today. Look forward to talking with you all when we're done.
Thank you, Congressman. The Democrat candidate for the 6th District, Jeanne Hendricks.
Yes, again, Jeanne Hendricks, DFL endorsed candidate. Thank you so much for having us here and having this event. I have so enjoyed this. I just want to say that I think, what we need in Washington too is working together. We need to be able to work together, how hard that may be. We are very polarized at this point, but we need to be able to work together going forward. It seems to me that agriculture is heading in the direction of renewable energy. We've been talking about that all morning. And there's money on the way for the ethanol program. There's money on the way for the conservation program, right? It is. I know I'm beating a dead horse dead here, but it's great that the government is going to be supporting all of these programs. And to decrease eggs dependence on oil, we need to move more to ethanol. Oil's expensive, it adds to the input costs. Ethanol will decrease the input costs. That's the direction that things need to go. Wind, solar, all of that. So yes, that's what I see, and I think we can work toward that end. And thank you again very, very much for having us here.
Let's thank our 6th District candidates for being here at FarmFest today. Now for the 7th District, we'll begin with the incumbent, Republican Michelle Fischbach.
Well, again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us, answer questions, and hear a little bit about what we're thinking. And I have been very proud to serve the 7th District and Minnesota for the last 2 years. And it is, I know that farmers are facing many challenges right now. In inflation, it affects everything. We've got overregulation, and so we need to make sure that we are responding to those. And so I would appreciate your input on the upcoming Farm Bill, and that's what we have been doing. We've been around the district, visiting with people, talking to the farmers and the groups that represent farmers, and so want to continue that and make sure that we are doing what makes sense to the farmers, not just what people in Washington, D.C. think makes sense, but what makes sense for you guys in the new Farm Bill. And, I am looking forward to working with all of you, continuing to work with all of you. And I see so many friendly faces, people that I've met, people that I've had great discussions with, and we will continue to do that. And appreciate your support 2 years ago, and I'm proud to serve and would appreciate your support again in the next election. Thank you very much.
The Democrat candidate for the 7th District, Jill Abissing.
Okay, again, thank you all for being here and paying attention and asking good questions. I would like to point out the reason I'm running is for a quality of life. It's not farm issues per se, it affects all of us in western Minnesota. 2/3 of our lawmakers in Washington, D.C. are voted in from urban areas. We have very few rural, truly rural representatives. And because of that, we have suffered in our area. The rural Minnesota, we have a 10% higher mortality rate. You'll die sooner than our urban counterparts, because we don't have medical access the way the cities do, because we cannot attract and retain quality physicians. This can change. It should not be based on population only for being able to get quality services up here. We also have a lower academic achievement than the urban counterparts. It's hard to attract and retain teachers because we don't have the services in our small towns. I'm all for infrastructure, growing our small towns. All you farmers live in a small town, I'm guessing. And to have to travel hundreds of miles sometimes just to get quality medical access is beyond the pale. I've heard horror stories, and there are ways of dealing with this. There can be a new metric of how to get services to our small towns and keep our farmers healthy, and attract the next generation of farmers, which is a major concern to me. So with that, I just would like to say thank you for having me. I'm really happy to speak with all of you.
Also vying for the 7th District seat is Bull Johnson of the Legalize Marijuana Now Party.
I remember when I decided to run for office, it was February 2001. I'm sitting in my barn with a dead baby goat in my hands. We don't know why we lost her. I mean, when you're in farming, that kind of stuff happens. It doesn't make it any easier, though. It sucks. It had been a very rough couple days. 3 days earlier, I'm looking on my phone and checking my cameras in my barn to see a baby piglet managed to get into the water trough. My barn's 10 miles away. I drive 10 miles over there in a snowstorm, pull this piglet out of the water, who's still alive, and spend the next 3 hours warming that piglet up till it's got enough body heat that's willing to nurse on mom to save that piglet. These are the kind of stories people in this room understand. And I couldn't help when I was sitting there thinking about this, saying we might be a lot better off as a country if more of our politicians had to deal with that. If more of the guys in D.C. who are making these decisions had to deal with that, had to pull a 12-hour shift in a sugar beet truck to beat the time limit. If they had to go out there and plow a road at 4 o'clock in the morning in snow so the rest of your neighbors can get in and out. That's what made me decide. And I saw what these two parties were doing to our country. They're tearing our country apart. It was more about the Republican Party or the Democratic Party than being Americans. It pissed me off. 2018, I retired from the Army and said, you know what, I'm done serving. I've done my time. 2021, I had to look up and say, maybe not. It's up to us. People keep on telling me, hey, Travis, we want people like us. We want to see people like us in D.C. Well, the choice is yours. When you look at me, I want you to understand something. What you see is what you get. I'm not coming up here, I'm not giving BS. You ask me a hard question, when I know you're not going to like the answer, Bob, I'll give you the answer. You ain't see a whole lot of that up here. When you ask me a question, you always know where I stand. Ask constituent, that's what you deserve to know. We'll get more information. Look up IamTheOnlyFarmerHere.com. Again, TheOnlyFarmerHere.com, and that will direct you to my website. Thank you very much.
Let's thank our 7th District candidates for being here today. Representing the 8th District, the incumbent Republican Pete Stauber. Your closing comments.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks all for being here and spending some time, and to all the members and the candidates, thanks for joining us here. You know, I'm privileged to represent Minnesota's 8th Congressional District with a diverse economy to include agriculture, mining and timber harvesting and shipping and recreation. And one of the things that we must remember is the backbone and the fabric of this nation is the American family farm. One of the things that we haven't talked about here, and I'm in full support of it, is repealing the death tax for the American family farm. If we want to keep the family farm alive, we must do that. We can't go globally to these big corporations. Second of all, the inflation is killing America in all sectors, including the family farms. The diesel prices you are paying, the inputs, the fertilizers, up to 200, 300% for the fertilizers to feed us, to feed America, and to feed the world, and it's simply unacceptable. So from my perspective, I want the family farm to thrive. I want you to have the ability to pass that farm down to your children and grandchildren. As I said, farming is the backbone of our state and our communities, and I appreciate you all being here. I'm Congressman Pete Stauber, and I look forward to your support as we enter these next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Con. 8th District Democrat candidate Jeanne Schultz.
Again, my name's Jeanne Schultz. I'm the DFL endorsed candidate for the 8th Congressional District, which is a very, very special place. with the headwaters of the Mississippi River, with beautiful trails and parks, most beautiful in the country, shores of Lake Superior, and frankly, it has amazing people in the 8th. I've been going across this district, meeting with everyone, talking about their concerns, their issues, and I really want to thank not just the people here asking questions, but I want to thank all of you for working in farming, for being in our ag industry. I know how important it is to the state, to the 8th, and for our country. And we need to make sure we're electing people like Paul Wellstone and Colin Peterson. Those two were champions, and we need more. Angie Craig is a champion, Klobuchar, Tina Smith, but we need more champions for family farming to make sure we get a strong Farm Bill in 2023, and I'm willing to do that hard work. I have an 8-year track record of working across the aisle. I was served on the House Ag Committee and worked with Jeanne Poppy. I know how to get things done across the aisle because I've only served in a divided legislature, and I want to take that experience and expertise and do that in DC. Because people, frankly, they're sick of divisiveness. They're sick of people fighting. They just want their elected representative to get things done, and I truly believe it's possible. I truly, truly believe, and we need to make sure we're electing the people that will do the job. Unfortunately,